franktalks.com.
We have had an entire generation of children who grew up by not making friends organically. You didn't just go outside and make friends. You had to have play dates organized by parents who got to know each other first. So when they're older, how different were the initial romantic relationships of these kids than the generations before them? Relationship coach Frank Kermit is back on the show. He joins us via Skype from right here in Montreal. Hi, Frank.
Hello, Peter. How are you?
Just chickadee-boo. Thanks very much for being on the program. I don't necessarily know if this is really a new idea when it comes to how people are dating these days, as opposed to a throwback to when everything seemed to be arranged by your parents anyway. So how different is dating today for kids who didn't grow up making friends organically like the generations before them?
Peter, this is a topic I really enjoy discussing because there are so many facets that younger people are facing today in dating that older generations didn't have to contend with. So let's go over them. The first thing you said is that these kids probably spend a lot more time with technology. They don't know necessarily how to relate to other people as well. They're kids who grew up in usually smaller families, so they didn't have a number of siblings to grow up with where they had to learn to share and get along and realize that sometimes things don't go your way and sometimes somebody's going to get away with something they shouldn't be getting away with. We're dealing with kids that are coming from smaller homes, less siblings. We're also dealing with the kids that are coming from broken homes. They're not watching their parents work things out and stay together against all odds. They're watching their parents break up, go off and date, sometimes depending on who they're living with and depending on what their parents' sex rules are about having people sleep over. They're watching their parents go through a series of short-term relationships or long-term relationships that still don't work out. And then they're thrust into the world when they become adults and they're told, okay, go date, go find someone, go make it work, and it's just supposed to happen. The reality is it's not just supposed to happen, and they're struggling more than ever. So they go back to the technology, and the technology is you go through the apps, you go through online dating. What they're really needing to learn, it's not the apps, it's not the technology, is they need to learn how to connect. They need to learn how to get along with other people. And that is becoming a struggle for them.
Now, you mentioned the word struggle, and I'm wondering, struggle is relative. It would seem to be that no matter which generation you talk to, from someone who's currently in their 90s to someone who is just dating for the first time, they're always going to put the hardships of dating for the first time within the confines of whatever their parameters were. So it was a struggle to them, no matter what time period they were in. It's only with wisdom and age that you realize maybe my struggle was different than my parents' struggle, or my struggle is different than what kids go through today. So can you quantify the struggle based on that? Because it is a struggle for everyone, isn't it?
Everybody has a struggle, but let's not forget the power of social norms. So I'm going to give you a very, very specific example, which I think is going to illustrate this topic.
Okay. There
was a time where the social norms in place, it was expected that a boy would ask a girl out. It was expected that he would build up the courage to be able to just go and approach someone and risk rejection. Nowadays, the concept of going up to a stranger and asking them out can be potentially hazardous because you don't know how that person that you're approaching is going to react. So it's just better not to approach.
Okay.
The social norms that were in place that alleviated a lot of the questions of, well, what do I do? We don't have that question now. We know what you don't do. The things you used to do, you don't do anymore. Okay, now what? Now you go, if you want to meet somebody, there are ways to meet people, but what do you do when you meet them? Before, the challenge was, how do you meet someone? Now the challenge is, well, I know how to meet somebody. There's a bunch of ways to meet somebody. But what do we talk about? How do I even know myself? How do I know what to ask them? The social norms that used to be in place that dictated how people would make choices, how limited those choices would be, what careers you could have, what careers you could not have. Sometimes that was based on gender. Sometimes that was based on what would be socially acceptable in that community. All of those social norms have been taken away. People have absolute freedom to choose whatever they want to do, structure any kind of relationship they want to structure. It doesn't have to be monogamous. It could be anything at all. But all of that choice without knowing what to do with it, that's what's leading people to struggle with a certain misery. Once upon a time, it was, what if what I want doesn't fit in with the social norms in place? Now the struggle is an internal one. I got to know who I am before I go through this.
Is there the angst, though, that there was in previous teenage years? And the reason why I bring that up, I keep reading more articles, and I never know if they're really accurate or not, as to how dating has changed to the point where it's almost non-existent. Two things come to mind from my generation of children. It seems to be that when you were a teenager, back when I was a teenager, certain things you wanted to do, you just took for granted. Everyone wanted to get a driver's license. That seemed to be important. You went to house parties. Everyone wanted a girlfriend or a boyfriend. Nowadays, it seems no one really cares about getting a driver's license anymore. That sort of thing seems to have gone by the wayside. And the idea of dating in the way we thought we knew dating as in the past doesn't seem to exist anymore. So are there pressures? Because it seems to be the social confines of situations are different. So does that change the pressure within relationships, or is there the same kind of pressure that we used to have? Just different.
I love your questions, Peter. I always love your questions. They're incredibly thought-provoking. There's so much I want to say here, but we've got a limited amount of time, so I'm going to do my best to condense these answers.
Go ahead.
First of all, you have to take into consideration whether or not people want to get serious, their age. If someone is in their, let's say, mid-20s, right now, in today's day and age, in their mid-20s, they're probably working on getting a career. They need to go to school longer for different types of careers. Once upon a time, you'd have a high school degree, you could learn on the job. Nowadays, if you finish a university bachelor's degree, that's considered the beginning of your education, because more and more professions are saying, nope, you got to get a master's, you got to get a PhD. So if somebody is getting all of their schooling done, they probably don't want to get too serious in their 20s when they can't move forward in their relationships. So a lot of people are saying, I don't want to get serious until I'm established. That pushes everybody wanting to get established in their 30s. Here's what's happening, though, and this is what I see in people coming to me now that are in that age group of 25 to 35. They're coming to me now saying, I've been focusing on my career. I've been focusing on getting established. I wanted to buy a house. I wanted to get the fun out of my system. I'm ready to settle down now. But they don't have the experience which would have taught them the social skills to be able to connect.
So are you saying it's almost like arrested development?
Yeah, that's as good a term as any. That's as good a term as any. Because what we're dealing with here is a people who have not continued on a personal path of personal development. And without that personal development, all the things that people learned when they were dating in their teens and realized, oh, this is bad because it cost me a relationship. It cost me somebody saying, I don't want to date you anymore. I've learned my lesson. I'm not going to do that again in my future relationships. Well, if you put off getting into more, when I use the word relationship, I'm talking about a serious commitment of some kind, where you're choosing to spend your time and energy and efforts on one person as opposed to just dating casually, where nobody gets that extra level of commitment from you. Once you end up to a point where you say, okay, now I want a serious relationship, but I don't know how to behave like someone who wants to be in a serious relationship. I don't even know what I expect out of being in a serious relationship. I've never had one. I've gone out, I've had fun, but I want something more meaningful. The second part of this, and I really want to make this point, is that a lot of young people, when I say young people, I'm still talking about they're in their 20s and maybe early 30s, they wanted to focus on having fun. Fun is a wonderful thing. Fun is fantastic, and it's a necessary component. But here's what a lot of young people are learning. Fun does not equal fulfillment. You could be having fun doing something, but at the end of that journey of fun, you're looking for the next distraction. You're looking for the next means of escape. Fun does not lead to fulfillment. The things that lead to fulfillment tend to usually take more work. When you want to have a fulfilling career, you're not necessarily having fun at everything you're doing in that career. There are times you're going to have to buckle down and do some of the work that you don't want to do, but you stick to it anyway, because that, at the end of the day, is fulfilling, even if it's not always fun. And relationships are exactly on this level. Relationships unto themselves are not fun, but they do provide a level of fulfillment that just casual dating and having fun cannot offer.
And going back to my initial question and the reason why we were talking about this in the first place brings us full circle to the point of why positions like yours, relationship coaches, exist today and are necessary as opposed to many, many years ago. Because things have changed so much to the point where we need relationship coaches. Frank, I thank you very much for being on the program with us once again. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
Anytime you need me, I will be there.
Relationship coach Frank Kermit. You can check out his website at franktalks.com, and you can go to my website at thestuffile.com, go to the What's On page for this show, which is show number 0484, and you'll find the link to his site.
Need help with love, sex, dating, and relationship issues? Help from Frank Kermit, the best-selling author and Canada's most international relationship coach, is only a click away at franktalks.com. Coaching available in person, by phone, and by Skype. For singles, couples, and alternative lifestyles, franktalks.com.